How's it? Welcome back. So, if you are trying to lucidly witness the moment that you fall asleep for either a lucid dreaming or astral projection type of practice, or maybe you just want to experience it for whatever reason, right? It's an inherently hard thing to do, right? Because the only way to really do it, aside from just randomly getting lucky and having your conscious awareness kick in the moment that you fall asleep, is to be purposefully paying attention to the falling asleep process and essentially doing what I like to refer to as meditating on the falling asleep process. The problem with that, though, is it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? You're trying to be purposefully paying attention and keeping your conscious awareness intact as you're falling asleep so you can witness this one moment, but because you're consciously aware, that's causing you to stay awake, right? And then on top of that, it's hard to keep your conscious awareness intact for prolonged periods of time. So really, you're trying to do all this and fall asleep as quickly as you possibly can. So, it's a pretty hard thing to do. But anyway, I had a comment come in where someone was wanting to get my approach for how I tend to do it and see if that would potentially help them. And for this person, they're already doing all the physical things correctly already. So they got their bed set up, the room cooled off as much as it possibly can, right? They, set aside some time to try and mentally wind down a couple hours before bed. When they're in the bed, they're trying to stay very still and not move around too much. So because they kind of have all that checked off already, I'm going to try to focus more on what I'm doing internally or mentally as I'm falling asleep. And, my initial answer here is going to be a kind of bullshit answer that I'm sure is not going to be all that helpful for, at least a good amount of people out there. But what I'm essentially doing is I'm doing open awareness meditation, right? I mean, I'm trying to stay very still. That is an absolutely key point to my approach. Once I get in bed, I really, for the most part, do not move at all. And I know I can lie there basically totally still for a solid hour, no problem, right? So I got that part down, but then on top of staying very still, I'm also trying to stay very mentally still as well and quiet my mind down as much as I can so I can just have, random thoughts and images be popping up from my subconscious. That's the kind of route I'm trying to go with it, right? But then as it's popping up, I'm trying to really, just passively watch them, right? I don't want to get too invested or wrapped up in the narrative of what is coming up, because then it, for the most part, will tend to cause you, it's a very good way to cause you to lose your lucidity, get wrapped up in what's going on, get kind of lost in it, and then you fall asleep unconscious like we do most of the time. And so a pretty good way that I have found to kind of, be passively watching it without paying too much attention to it is I just put my attention someplace else. And for me, I like to put it on my body's physical sensations, right? So essentially, as you're starting to fall asleep and your external senses start to retreat, right? You start not to really be able to hear stuff very much anymore. And then the physical sensations start to go as well. And you can get this nice kind of numbing feeling, what I've referred to as for years as like my body buzz meditation. So I'll just put my awareness on that. And then I'm essentially just kind of letting these passive thoughts and images pop up. And that's generally my main approach to it. Now, something else that I think is really important to point out here, though, is that as you're going through this process, say, everything works out exactly how I said, right? You got the body buzz thing going on. These, the deeper type of hypnagogic images are popping up where it's like a full-on moving scene, almost like you're watching a movie or something like that. Say you do get there. What happens, pretty much every time is it doesn't just work smoothly, perfectly the first time you enter into that state. Typically, you'll get there, and then say you notice a bit too much of it, or the dog barks, or whatever happens that causes you to wake up, right? It blacks everything out. The nice physical sensations that you were feeling leave as well, and now compared to how good you were feeling, your body might even feel uncomfortable, and it sucks, right? And for me, I have worked this into just how I tend to go to sleep pretty much every single night. Like when I'm going to sleep, I almost always know how far along this process I am and how close I am being to actually falling asleep. But then I will always get there. The first couple of times I get into that state, realize too much kicks me out of it. It sucks. But then I also know that there's no point to trip on it, right? I'm tired. I'm right on the edge of sleep. It kind of screwed up. Doesn't matter. Just relax. I'll be right back to that state again sooner than later. And then you get, another crack at it. The main thing you want to try to watch out for is starting to beat yourself up too much about it, because then what can happen is you can really start to mind fuck yourself and totally end up giving yourself insomnia, which of course insomnia sucks. And you know what happens sometimes too is, like, say when you are having insomnia and you're getting kind of tired, right, is like your mind will kind of shut off for the time when you are awake, right? You start drifting towards sleep, but then it will just kick in at that moment when you are actually falling asleep, and these hypnagogic images are popping up. You got this nice body feeling going on, but that's when it kicks in and you're like, oh, there it is, and then it kicks you back out and you're wide awake again. And so yeah, you want to try to avoid that as much as you can. The kind of mess up thing though is if you start picking up this practice, that will absolutely happen sometimes. I mean, without a doubt. But you know, it's all good, right? I think overall, the overall benefits of having a nice established falling asleep process that you can follow every night when you lie down in bed way outweighs the times where you will occasionally, you know, get screwed over by it and be suffering with insomnia from it. Anyway, thanks for the question. Hope that helps someone out there. And until the next video, keep the lucid dreaming practice legit.